am in opposition to the development for a number of reasons. There are also 27 other residents who were not able to make it today. However, I do have here original letters from them signed, and it includes all of their concerns and opposition, why they're opposed to this development. And I guess I'll give that to the clerk when I finish. One of the, and to piggyback on what Ms. Jones was saying, talking about health, we have, as African, this is an African-American neighborhood predominantly. African-Americans are predisposed to having cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension. There have been a number of studies that have been conducted, including by the Center for Disease Control, by OSHA, and a number of prestigious universities that have proven that diesel exhaust fumes lead to lung cancer, lead to cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, blood clots, and also genetic mutations. Genetic mutations essentially cause cancer, but what they're referring to, especially in this case, is methylation, which means genes are turned on and off. All of us have within our bodies, all the trillion cells in our bodies all have the same genes, with the exception of our reproductive cells. Some of those genes are turned on and some are turned off. That's the reason why our hair follicles don't produce hydrochloric, the digestive acids in our stomach, because those genes in the hair follicle cells are turned off. Same reason why we don't have hair growing in our stomach, because the genes that are responsible for growing hair are turned off in the stomach. However, with diesel fumes and exhaust coming from the trucks, coming from the construction vehicles, if this development goes forward, those genes could potentially be turned on, and that is what happens. That's typically how cancer happens. So according to these studies, one of the studies found that the genetic changes that occurred at 2,800 different points in people's DNA, and it affected about 400 genes. So that's a lot. So that's one of our concerns in terms of health. We don't want this development in our neighborhood because right now we have the buffer of the trees. They're buffering us from the John Young Parkway, plus the industrial area that's already there that has been put there over the past 25, 30 years. So when it comes to these people who have cancer and they don't know why, it is very likely that they have already been affected by some of the diesel fumes from the trucks that are just on the other side of this property. We've got the Frito-Lay factory, all of these plants all around this neighborhood, and it's likely and possible that they have already started causing a little cancer alley in Orlando. Cancer Alley, if you're not familiar with it, is referring to a place in Mississippi where the city put a lot of toxic chemicals and all kinds of industrial waste around that neighborhood up there, and people got cancer over a number of years and they didn't know why. And then findings found that it was because of the toxic materials that they had been putting there. So this tends to happen. It's often known as environmental injustice, tends to happen quite frequently in African-American neighborhoods. This doesn't seem to happen too much in Caucasian neighborhoods. So we would like, on behalf of the people, we would like to encourage that this industrial development is not placed in our neighborhood. And I was very happy to hear Commissioner Hill talking about how much interest they've had in some of the other African-American neighborhoods and the improvements that they have done. And so we would like to have that same consideration in terms of having this area turned into a conservation education area instead of being turned into any kind of a development. We don't have that in our neighborhood. We have 2 community centers. This would be perfect to complement that, to teach, help the students in the neighborhood learn about environmental education. Also, the local schools could use it as a conservation education center. On top of that, building this would violate a number of federal laws because there's a number of endangered species that utilize this for habitat. Although there might not be an eagle's nest exactly on the property, even though we don't know if there is an eagle's nest within a mile of this. Therefore, this is considered eagle habitat. Ospreys, a number of other species utilize this as their habitat, and therefore the habitat is protected just as the species is protected. A species does not have to be on that location if its habitat if it's located within a certain number of miles of that area. Additionally, I would like to say that this is a residential neighborhood. It doesn't need an industrial development there. And we don't need any more. We already have those. And we would like to, again, the trucks. We already have trucks that are driving down Ferguson Drive. They shouldn't be, but they do it anyway. There's no way that anybody's going to control them and make sure they go where it is that they're supposed to go down this road. So long story short, in summary, we don't want this in our neighborhood. If it needs to go somewhere, I would suggest maybe Windermere, maybe Islesworth, maybe Baldwin Park, but definitely not in our neighborhood. We are just as important as any of those neighborhoods are, and so please consider that. We have gardens, too. Those gardens would be affected by all this diesel exhaust.
20 seconds if you could wind up.
Okay. We enjoy having gardens, but we wouldn't be able to enjoy them if we were outside and all the diesel exhaust. We would like to have Halloween parties, too, at our community center, but again, with diesel exhaust and pollution, air pollution, then, I had 20 seconds, then we would, not be able to do that either. So a number of the things the commissioners have mentioned, we would love to have in our neighborhood, too, but with this development being there, it would be harmful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Marshall Robinson.